Welcome to the second episode of the Beyond the Barn Doors podcast. This week we'll be moving forward in time since the 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee to discuss the 2019 production of Macbeth. We are still your hosts, Archie Collins
and Mark Jones. As always, we will attempt to move from page to stage in conversation with a few members of the cast and this week's director, Mr. Edwards. In between these interviews, the cast members will be put to the test with our Barn Door games to see how they place on the Barn Door score leaderboard. This week's cast members are...
I'm Ollie Silverman and I played Macbeth.
I'm JJ Stewart and I played Malcolm.
I'm Tom Budgeon and I played Macduff.
Before we get started with the more exciting section of the podcast, we'll delve into the more educational side of Macbeth.
I won't go too much into the original performance conditions, as Macbeth is known more widely than the likes of Spelling Bee. However, it will be worth mentioning a few things about Shakespeare's theatre. Macbeth was written around the turn of the 1600s, after the tragedies of King Lear and Hamlet. Shakespeare sourced the tale from Holinshed's Chronicles that depicted the early history of England, Scotland and Ireland. However, much of the play reflects Shakespeare's attitudes towards James I, who brought together rule over England and Scotland. James I's demonology reflected the superstition at the time surrounding the supernatural, which explains the presence of the three witches at the start of the play. The play explores the psychological breakdown of the patriarch, who is conflicted between ambition and loyalty.
In this case, it is difficult to know the original Slap GT, so here is an overview of our own RGS performance that we used. So, style, symbolic with elements of naturalism. Location, the Scottish Isles. Atmosphere, unnerving and disturbing. Period, caught between modern punk and 20th century royalty. Genre, historical. Themes, desire, violence and manipulation.
Of course, no one knows the show better than the director. Thankfully, we have Mr. Edwards here to answer a few questions about the RGS production of Macbeth.
Before we start the more serious questions, we have a few quick-fire, random, some of them to do with Macbeth, some of them not, questions for Mr. Edwards to answer. So let's go. Right, so first of all, Banquo or Macduff?
Banquo or Macduff?
Yeah.
In what's the context?
It's literally nothing...
Banquo. Banquo's the best part in the play.
Okay, drum or bass?
Drum.
Scotland or England?
England.
Fife or Cawdor?
Fife.
RSC or RGS?
RGS every time.
To be or not to be?
Not to be. Definitely not to be.
Musicals or plays?
Musicals.
Sweeney Todd or Macbeth?
Oh, this is a Macbeth podcast, right? Macbeth.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
That's all of them.
I put that difficult one at the end just to switch it up a bit.
Yeah, that's cruel.
We'll do some more serious questions now based off the actual show. So, firstly, what made you decide to choose to do this show at RGS?
That's a really good question. I've been thinking about this because I think choosing a show is always it's a mixture of, let's see who really wants to do a show, like a specific show out of all the teachers and directors there. And it's a mixture of what show would be great with the people that we have. And it's a mixture of sometimes, well, we've got to do something. So let's do something. And some of the shows I've directed have been not let's do something, but they've been very much based on the people we've got. Like One Man, Two Governors was a real, here's a cast of people who would fit these perfectly. They're all funny. They're all, they can improvise. They can do all these things. Macbeth was a passion project for me. The real reason is I saw a version of it at the National Theatre. God knows how long that theatre will exist for. But I saw a version with Rory Kinnear and Anne-Marie Duff in the lead parts. It was a couple of years ago, a couple of years before we did it. And I hated it so much that I thought, I want to do that and I want to do it better. because it's a play which I've always loved. I was in it at university. I think I was probably in it in like primary school. I remember various different productions of it, and also I saw a production of it when I was about 14, which was Anthony Sher. I'm sounding like a real lovey. It was Anthony Sher and Harriet Walter, and it's a really famous production because it was a studio thing. There was blood everywhere. It was amazing, and I've always loved the play, and I've never directed it before, so I thought it would be a perfect opportunity to do it at RGS.
Yeah, and also
Smart children.
set yourself sort of a challenge because it's quite a difficult play to do. I've always found that Lady Macbeth is possibly one of the most difficult roles to portray out of anyone, but I think we did it well here. And you're mentioning the National Theatre show brings me on to another question that I've planned here, which is at the time when we did Macbeth, everyone was sort of deciding to do Macbeth. This included the National Theatre, the RSC did one.
Christopher Eccleston, yeah. That was a high concept thing, wasn't it?
Yeah. Did you take any influence from any of these shows, or did you instead view them more as competition? I know you've all said that you wanted to better the National Theatre one, but did you?
It's funny actually, because although I say I wanted to do it better, there were some things in there which influenced me quite a lot. And I think that's always the way with these productions. Rufus Norris is a great director. Amory Duff and Rory Kinnear are fantastic. What I think that production, and actually I took two influences from that one. One was there was a podcast interview with the Macbeths talking, and they spoke a lot about some work they'd done in rehearsal on the loss of the child, on the fact that the couple had lost a child, which is such a fleeting textual reference. I've given suck and know what it is to love the babe that milks me is, I think, it. I'm sure there is more, but and we turned that into the entire focal point of the concept. The idea of the child being the witch, existing, rising from the grave, starting with we started with a funeral for a child, didn't we? It was a bleak production.
It was very much like the Coram Boy one, where they had the ghost of one of the characters throughout the whole of the play, just haunting the.
It was Catherine Davidson, wasn't it?
Yeah, I've seen the pictures. I've never seen Coram Boy. I didn't see it when it was on originally either. But yeah, so I think that was a podcast where they talked about the psychological nature of that relationship and it struggling with having lost a child, which I found really interesting. But I think I borrowed liberally from another production. I stole loads of stuff from Jamie Lloyd's production at the whatever it's called, that theatre on the near Piccadilly Circus. What's it? Not Piccadilly Circus, near Trafalgar Square. The Trafalgar Studios. That makes sense. Yeah. It was James McAvoy and Claire Foy that time. And if you look at pictures of that production, it's end on from one side, and then there are some seats on the stage, and it's kind of in traverse, but also kind of end on. It's remarkably similar to the configuration we ended up with, which was also pretty much how the Jungle was laid out. But in my defense, I was designing that show as well as directing it, so I had to borrow from things because I'm not a designer. But I did have fun making a model box. That was a half-term project. That's what I should be doing now. But yes, so I never saw the RSC production, but the National Theatre influenced me to do the show and gave me a couple of ideas about character. But really, that Jamie Lloyd production was fab. That was just visceral blood, and I think the play's about elements. There's such strong textual references to earth and to fire and to water all the way through. Water can't wash the blood clean, the fire. So I really wanted to include those sensory experience, the blood being close to you, the fire being real, even if it was on for 10 seconds. That was the most pointless.
I was thinking about that the other day, and that it's only in that one scene, and it was a lot of work just to have a piece of fire in the middle of the stage. But if that's what you wanted to achieve in terms of directing, to bring that, it was a nice element to add into a piece of theatre, because obviously we don't normally deal with fire. I mean, you've used it once in One Man, Two Governors and in that show, but it was something that brought it.
I let Will Tuckwell loose with lighter fluid on stage. That's a never to be repeated. We were a bit safer with Macbeth, but it's interesting because yes, it was quite fleeting. It didn't even make the photos somehow. It's like they skipped that scene. I think there's one where it like glimmers in the background next to Mia's head, but it's one of the most memorable bits of the production. Actually, was that short scene, because it's
definitely
also that scene. Because when I was at university, I played Ross, and I remember that scene being important because the imagery of the old man and all the metaphors, which was you, wasn't it, Mark? We ended up making it the porter, was, and we talked about this in rehearsal. It's when the eclipse has happened. So the act of regicide has physically changed the weather to the point where the atmosphere needed to change so much that a fire on stage gives you that feeling of it's kind of dark, but it's light, and it's day, but it's night, and no one quite knows what's going on, and they're all a bit confused by it. So I wanted that campfire vibe.
And also, by using a campfire, you obviously get a really cool lighting effect on people's faces as well, which is a bit of a shame, obviously, that wasn't in the photos.
Maybe there are some somewhere. I'll look again.
But
yeah, absolutely. It's a great tool. And Will, who did the lights for that show, Will and I met when we were at school, and we've done, we did, Macbeth was the last show we did together, and that's our 15th, I think, production that we've done together. Professional, amateur, school, everything. And he's amazing. And I know if I give him a box of tricks, then he'll use them. So we had the idea for the coronation, for there being lights outside and this huge explosion of light. And the idea of this central trapdoor with light coming up and down from it. The way he lit JJ at the end, that kind of silhouette thing with the crown. That's just... And I trusted Will enough that I knew it's really hard to light stuff in the round. And I talked to my GCSE students still, because Macbeth was in no staging type. It was, and it was in every staging type. It was end on, traverse, in the round, and there were little promenade bits as well where stuff happened in the audience, and like it doesn't. You couldn't fit it into an exam answer in any way, which is helpful, isn't it?
Right. That leads on to sort of our another of my questions, which is, what made you choose to set it in this era, which I've described as being mixed between dubstep and late 20th century royalty? What were your sort of original production ideas going into it? I know we've already talked about the Jamie Lloyd show that you went to see, but the specific design of this show was something which was completely different, I'd say, to any other production that I've seen, certainly in the 7 years that we've been at school. So what was your choice to set it in this style?
Yeah, what do you mean by late 20th century royalty? Like
I was trying to
Harry and Meghan.
Yeah, define what, because obviously
21st century.
It wasn't the camo and whatever, the army soldier wasn't like, that's quite a modern soldier costume. Mm-hmm. But then we also had the like really long gown for Ollie at the coronation, and you very much. I was trying not to use the word timeless because I don't enjoy that necessarily as a styling choice, but you very much used different elements of different shows, and it almost brought it to another level because it added to the supernatural effect almost, because you weren't sure where we were actually placed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're right. Timeless is sort of overused. It tends to be a thing for me with Shakespeare, because the source material has existed in all of the time periods of the last 400 years. unless there's a really good reason for it to be specifically in one time period, which really fits and it adds to it. I think the source material of Shakespeare is kind of vague to the point where it does, it can take that sort of softer edges, that softer focus in terms of time period. There was nothing in our production that was pre-20th century or pre-21st century, really. They had mobile phones, they had record players. Louisa was basically dressed as a Reigate mother in like a set which was entirely stuff I'd bought from IKEA. The witches were kind of hobo chic. There was nothing anchoring it in that modern time, because there are certain thematic things which are a bit complicated and problematic once you start fixing it in 2010 or whatever it is. So I think I've always liked, there are certain plays. Macbeth is one, Hamlet is another. I think plays which are about psychology and about a psychological relationship work in that sort of slightly vague sense of time, because they're sort of about every time.
Yeah, and it's more of a focus on like the words and the mental effect of what's happening to the character, as opposed to being focused on set. Yeah,
absolutely. We also, if I'm being honest, didn't have a lot of budget for that show, so we used CCF uniforms because we could get the old CCF uniforms. I spent a long time, you probably shouldn't use this, but you spent a long time arguing with the CCF department about why they wouldn't let us use the modern camo.
Right.
And I really I got it wrong when they basically said, "Oh no, it's like government issue. It's really important." And I said, "Well, it's basically just a different type of dressing up, isn't it?" And they weren't happy with me. That was the sort of like change in their face.
Yeah.
Even Alex Cox was a bit like, "Oh, we went too far there." With that, but they did lend us all the kind of old camo, so we had a cheap source of costume. I was always going to have that kind of unfinished, bloody sheet look around the outside as well. A bit like there's something behind it that it's going to reveal. I think early on, conceptually, there was an idea that, in fact, it was that RSC production that did the idea that it's kind of a cycle. The timer ran out, didn't it? And then it was going to be a thing. So we were going to reset everything back to behind the sheets. And have like a beheaded, like a headless corpse on stage at the beginning and the end. Yeah. Because it's, what bloody man is that? And they've cut off the Thane of Cawdor's head to give the title to Macbeth. And then by the end, they cut off Macbeth's head. So it's kind of, there is a cycle in there that the witches control. Yeah. That was when we came across the idea of Holly, as we called her, the Macbeth's daughter existing. I dropped some of that because I think it gets a bit messy. I think it was still a bit messy with all the millions of witches, if I'm honest. But that was a school play device of having another 15 people in the play.
Yeah.
On stage the whole way through, holding mirrors. That was weird. What was the question? Why was it timeless? It's partly budget. Partly budget, partly the idea that it can be, it is about every time period, Macbeth, and that psychological relationship exists in any time. I think one thing that it's easy to get wrong with Macbeth when you're modernizing it, and the psychological relationship is one thing, but the idea of the crown is really important, and the idea of Scotland meaning something. It has to mean something for him to want to go to the lengths he goes to take it. So where productions go wrong is where they make Scotland irrelevant. And if it's totally post-apocalyptic and destroyed, if the world doesn't mean anything, then it's not worth fighting for. So our world still had to be glamorous, hence the king's uniforms and all that the nicer stuff still had to be worth fighting for.
For the first game this week, we have adapted our line remembering game into a monologue fill in the gaps.
Oh my god.
In which each cast member will have to recall a section from a selection of your character's monologues from Macbeth.
Oh no. Oh no.
Okay.
But we cut so much of the script. What if
That's
Oh
true.
no, all of it hasn't been cut. I picked the ones that weren't cut.
Okay.
This is
on.
100% unedited, unadulterated
Oh.
Macbeth.
Okay.
Beautiful.
So we're going to start with Ollie. Right. So I'm going to read the monologue and then I'll stop when I want you to fill in the gap. Okay.
Okay.
If it were done when 'tis done, then 'twere well it were done quickly. If the assassination could trammel up the consequence and catch with his surcease success.
Yeah.
But this blow might be the be-all and the end-all here.
Oh, I that's the only all that you just read was the one I knew. I don't know what happens after that. Bill and Endel here. I don't know. I'm gonna be honest.
Okay. Have you given up on that one?
So it was the be all and end all here.
Might be the be-all and the end-all here.
And he just has to say the next word.
Here on is it something like
Next line, yeah.
here at the something time? There's time in there, is there? Oh my
Yeah.
god.
Yeah, it is.
We'll give you
Okay.
half a point. We'll give you half a point.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. I'm so
There
happy.
you go. But here, upon this bank and shoal of time,
All the time.
Yeah.
we'll jump the life to come. Okay, now,
Oh my god.
now we're continuing. But in these cases, we still have judgment here, that we but teach bloody instructions which, being taught, return to plague the inventor.
Wasn't this bit cut?
Mark?
I don't know. No. Maybe I don't know. I think mine's probably cut from my brain. To be honest, I can't remember. I don't.
Bloody instructions which, being taught, return to plague the inventor.
Oh, I don't know.
AJ knows it.
You know it. Oh, that's sick.
Okay, anyway, you're giving up on that one.
I am
Okay.
giving up on that one.
This even-handed justice commends the ingredients of our poisoned chalice to our own lips.
Oh,
Right.
Mate,
obvious?
Yes.
how could you miss out on the poison chalice?
Poison chalice.
Okay, carrying on.
Symbol.
He's here in double trust. First as I am his kinsman and his subject, strong both against the deed, then as his host, who should against his murderer shut the door, not bear the knife myself. Besides, this Duncan hath borne his faculties so meek, hath been so clear in his great office, that his virtues will plead like angels, trumpet-tongued against the deep damnation of his taking off, and pity, like a naked newborn babe, striding the blast, or heaven's cherubim, horsed upon the sightless careers of the air, shall blow the horrid deed in every eye, that tears shall drown the wind. The wind.
Right.
Shall blow the horrid deed in every eye, that tears shall drown the wind.
This is like most famous line in Macbeth, or one of them.
Oh wait, is it?
Get this.
Oh
my God.
Oh, I know it.
No.
Oh, I know it.
No. What is it? Okay, if I don't get this one, that is awful. I can't.
I'm not telling you. I think I know it.
What is it? Hang on. Can you give me the last line again?
It starts with I. I'll give you. It starts with I.
Okay, so
Okay.
the line 4 is, upon the sightless couriers of the air, shall blow the horrid deed in every eye, that tears shall drown the wind.
Is this
I-
relevant?
Oh
after
my
that?
word. Wait.
What?
Oh, is this O full of scorpions in my mind? No.
No.
Ah,
No.
right.
God, no. That's later on, isn't it?
I. It starts with. You say I.
I.
Something.
Can you give me the word after I?
I have.
I have.
I have. I.
Oh my God! Come on!
I have. Oh my God! I have no something to prick the sides of my intent. Something like that. I have no spur. No
Carry
spur.
on.
No spur. I have no spur. Oh my
Yeah,
word.
carry on.
Thank you. I have no spur to prick the sides of my intent. Besides, is it besides next? Galloping over. Oh my God! What is it? I know this.
It's a
Oh,
You've got like a pole, and then you like.
what
vault?
anagram?
Yes!
No, wait, hang on. I have no spur to pick the size of my intake. Oh, vaulting ambition. Vaulting
Yes!
ambition.
Which?
Which I don't know.
Okay.
Oh my god!
Right.
Vaulting
I have
ambition.
no spur to prick the sides of my
Yeah.
intent. It's only vaulting ambition, which overleaps itself and falls on the other.
Falls upon the other. Oh my god.
Okay, we'll give you another half a point for that. So
Bing.
that's
All right, thank
you got 1
It's very
point.
It's very, very generous of you.
Right.
Right.
Moving on to JJ now.
Oh,
Now
no.
JJ's turn. It's one of your favourite monologues, JJ, so I hope you enjoy. We shall not spend a large expense of time before we reckon with your several loves, and make us even with you. My thanes and kinsmen, henceforth be...
Earls. The first that ever in Scotland named. Something like that.
Yeah, the first that ever Scotland in such an honour named. You can have a full point. You were nearly
Yeah,
there.
we'll give you the full point. Full
It
point.
was very well done.
What's more to do, which would be planted newly with the time, as calling home our exiled friends abroad that fled the snares of watchful tyranny, producing the forth the cruel ministers of this dead butcher and...
It's
Fiend like queen.
Yes.
Carry on.
Who, by some account, took off her life by...
That's it. No, that's all you need.
Okay.
Who, as 'tis thought by self and violent hands, took off her life.
Again, full point, I reckon.
Yeah. Pretty successful, JJ, not gonna lie.
Last one.
Certainly showing up Macbeth.
Oh no.
I've
This-
got someone speak. I fucking love
And
that.
what needful...
Swore.
This and what needful else that calls up. By the grace of grace will we perform in measure, time and place. So thanks to all at once and to each one.
Who we invite to see us crowned at school.
Oh, cold.
Straight in there. Fair enough.
I couldn't stop the last line of the play, could I? I had to know that one. Imagine forgetting the last line of the
Yeah.
So, right, anyway. Tom,
All right, let's go.
approach the chamber and destroy your sight. With a new Gorgon. Do not bid me speak. See, and then speak yourselves. Awake, awake. Ring the alarm bell. Murder and treason. Banquo and Donalbain. Malcolm, awake!
Up. Something about
I remember you
ringing the
gripping
bell.
me in this scene.
Malcolm Donalbain. Approach chamber, destroy your sight. Oh. I did. This is the one I just. Oh wait, sorry, I can't swear.
That's all right, that's all right.
This is the. I just screamed this one. I remember it, and it's
Yes.
not good.
Banquo and
So,
Donalbain.
that was
Malcolm,
epic.
awake!
Oh yeah, I yelled this one.
Didn't you need your asthma inhaler at one point? Because it was
Yeah,
it
multiple
was that like loud.
Right, so
Rise up, ring the bell.
Oh no, I know what it is. It's like isn't it like greatest damn or something is really bad has happened.
the first word shake.
Shake the temple. Shake the something about the temple.
No.
Oh my!
I don't know where you're getting temple from, to be honest.
That was took the life from the temple, wasn't it? Was that later on?
Anyway, you don't get the point for that, sorry.
Damn.
Shake off
More-
this downy sleep.
Oh yeah.
Right, continuing.
Fair enough.
Shake off this downy sleep. Death's counterfeit and
Oh, I've got no
death's
idea.
counterfeit and look.
That does not help.
And look. Death's counterfeit and look on.
Look on.
Something itself, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And look upon death or something itself. Look upon. Oh, I don't
Look on
know.
death itself. Okay, we'll give. Should we give him half mark?
That's my only guess. Look upon
Yes,
death.
Yeah,
half mark
yeah.
gang, half mark gang. Let's go.
Up and see the great doom's image. Malcolm Banquo.
Rise up, ring the bell. Come on, let's go.
Yeah, half.
Why not?
Half. As for your graves, rise up and walk like sprites. To countenance this horror, ring the bell.
Yeah, that's
So you got-
close.
yeah. 1. Okay,
Right.
now, Mark,
In this
what's the
final one, each of you are going to have to do a section of it, but obviously there was no monologue where all 3 of your characters were speaking, so it's just one of Macbeth's most famous monologues for you all to fill in.
Whoop.
Right, so starting off, Ollie's going to fill in the starting bit.
Or am I? I
He
don't
should
know.
have.
Am I going to be able to? I don't...
Who knows? At this rate, I doubt it.
fair point.
She should have died hereafter. There would have been a time for such a word.
Would have been time for such a word. Tomorrow, and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day.
Yeah, that's
Very
all you
good.
need.
All you want.
Yeah.
One
Well,
out
if
of
I didn't get
one.
that one, I'd be upset with myself.
And then, who's next? Tom, you're next. And to the last syllable of recorded time and...
Oh,
Come on.
I have not thought of this play. And to the last syllable of recorded time, and
Oh, I don't even know this one.
I don't even know where in the play this is.
It's just after she dead.
She should have died hereafter.
Syllable of recorded time.
It's Mark somebody says, the Queen, my lord, is dead.
My lord is dead.
Is dead.
JJ is cringing.
I'm cringing
This is-
hard, man.
I'm sorry. This is definitely Macduff. I'm.
And all I
Is it that one?
JJ, if
yeah.
you
Yeah.
say it, you get half a point for Tom.
Oh, and all our yesterdays of life that falls away to dusty death.
Yes.
How do you remember this stuff?
Correct.
Right, JJ, you're the final one. So out, brief candle. Life's but a walking shadow.
Poor player that
I know.
struck the hour upon the stage and then is heard no more. Life's but a walk.
It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing.
Nothing.
Swan low.
Nothing.
That's very good. That was 2.5 out of 3 there.
Now we move on to the main interview with the cast, discussing memories and the show itself in all its glory. Right, we'll start with a nice, relaxing question. What were your favourite memories from the show, or during the rehearsals, or any part of doing the show?
I thought that I thought your part with the peeing in the bucket was quite funny. Not gonna lie. that was top notch. Because I didn't get to see many of the other people's scenes for a long time. So then when I did, I was like, oh, this is great. And I just sort of really enjoyed it.
Mark,
on the stage
was
most
it
of the time.
What did you pee in the bucket with? Was it water?
Yeah, originally it was lemon juice because I had one of those squirty little lemons.
Oh, yeah.
That you
That's
get
so wasteful, though.
and
You
put
lemon.
on pancakes.
Oh,
But
I
then we
remember that.
refilled it with water after that. So
Oh,
it's to
right.
recycle, and
Yeah, great.
reassess. There's another something, but I don't know what it is.
Juice.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I used a little squeezy lemon, and most of the time it works, but most of the time it didn't. And I just missed the
How does
bucket.
that work?
But most of the time, okay, never mind.
I thought it was the same bucket that I then poured over you, like straight afterwards. So it's just like,
Yeah,
Bucket for the
we're
road.
just continuing with the illusion of
Yeah.
theatre.
it was beautiful.
Didn't you break your tooth, Mark?
I did chip my tooth during a performance of the show. I jumped off some stairs and my head went straight into a speaker, which was above the
Oh.
stairs.
Those are-
And then I dropped
nice,
back
though.
like that and got like whiplash and my tooth chipped out. But the play must go on. And
That's commitment right there.
I was the only person on that scene, so I had to climb through the trapdoor and just continue going. And then I found my tooth later when I went to the
That was the bit that surprised me the most. Was you not only did you crack it and continue, is you found the chunk. It was tiny.
Oh my god.
You found the
What did I
chunk.
say?
Did you then use that to like put it back on?
Now it turns out it was actually too small to reattach, so I just got this little bit of, I don't know, porcelain. I'm going to say porcelain.
You've got like
Probably
gold
not.
or something. You've been like a baller.
Yeah, I should have kept it. Looked like Dracula. But anyway, after that happened, I ate a breadstick and then it broke again. And that's
Oh,
that's the full story of my tooth. It's fixed
Oh.
again. But
How did a
That's
breadstick
that.
break your teeth?
it was a hard breadstick.
was it already like the tooth was already split, so it just like made it worse?
Yeah,
Oh damn!
it was
Oh.
literally. If you look at JJ's camera now, he
JJ,
needs to
speak.
speak
Breadstick.
for you to look at it.
JJ,
but,
speak.
Oh, I just ate it. Oh no. Oh no.
It was sort of a play that was sort of plagued with moments that happened on stage that should have stopped the show. Didn't Ellie Muller throw food all over?
Oh no, she poured water all over my hand while I was like speaking, and I was like, "What is going on?" Like, I don't understand. Oh, it was great. The banquet scene had some funny parts. I was like, there's a part where all the plates were getting like crushed because I had these big boots on,
Oh my
and then at the end I kicked the bread and it went into the chair, and then the chair just fell over and the plate sort of like span around on the ground for a
I
long
remember
time. And I was like,
the
oh, no.
plate just spun and
Yeah,
spun.
we were just sort of stood there like,
I just remember walking off stage for one part and hearing an incredibly loud crash behind me.
Oh,
And
damn.
as I then turn around, I see Joyce is being helped like out
Yes.
of
Oh my
stage.
word, yeah.
Someone
She like broke her leg. It went like between the stage and the stairs, and something ridiculous happened.
What, on one of the little staircases? Like,
Yeah,
like on the,
it
on the
like
sides?
opened and her leg just went through it, and her body kept going.
Ollie, of course, you had a lot more lines than anyone else to learn. How difficult did you find that process?
Well, that was pretty difficult to start off with. I basically just lived with the script. Like I had it walking to school and everything. I'd recorded all the lines. So I put on voices for all the other characters in the scenes I've been in. And then I would just like listen to it while I was walking to school because that was the only way I was going to get in my head. But yeah, it was difficult to start off with. I think it was more difficult because of all the cuts that we ended up like sort of repositioning a couple of things. But yeah, it was all right. It was a bit of a challenge, but we got there. Yeah.
And wasn't it at the same time as Find Me? Sort of?
Oh, true. Yeah, that's true.
Oh
Yes.
yeah,
Yes, it was. There you go.
yeah.
You had a lot
What?
of lines anyway to try and learn.
And then finally
Right,
sort of
exactly.
continued into
In the
like
best
May
position.
afterwards.
Yeah,
as
because
well.
finally just never ended. Because we, like, we were like,
I mean,
oh,
we're still
oh,
going to have another play. We don't
yeah,
know when it's
so
going to be.
done.
It might
then,
still happen.
Then you need to go and form it to the third form. Then you need to go to Leatherhead. Then you need to go to Leatherhead again. It was just
Oh, yeah.
ongoing.
Oh, days.
But yeah, yeah, probably just repetition works best really for learning lines. I think.
You're onto something.
Yeah, repetition.
You know what? That might be a
Or,
good
you know,
idea.
people out there that need to look for tips from Ollie. You know, they might be want to learn how to do Macbeth. I don't know.
Happy to help. Happy to
They
help
should
anywhere I
hop
can.
on to
And also,
Tom
it's not like-
Door or something.
Yeah, and also Ollie, it wasn't like you had like they like mishaircut some of your lines from Find Me. You still had like a monologue in Find Me, didn't you?
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I mean, I think that it's the monologue and Find Me was sort of like a bit more fun because in Macbeth it was kind of like there were so many giant things where I would like have to really delve into what everything meant. Whereas with Find Me, obviously, it's all like normal English and all that. But
True.
yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, that was a
Yeah. There's like a
meaty
big tonal difference between like
Yeah.
the sort of medieval Shakespeare versus the David Bowie
Mm.
like
Yeah.
dance themed in the.
And also your sister Moses at the end as well.
so, yeah. Slightly different character from Macbeth, but yeah.
Anyway, we're not talking about Find Me. Sorry.
Oh, you should.
Find Me tangent.
I found the sword fighting was pretty difficult early on as well. I mean, like because I was in like stage fighting.
Shut up, JJ.
Shut up! That's not what I meant. But yeah, I mean, I remember, yeah, that was good fun though. I mean, I think when we really nailed it, Tom, it like after that was when it got really, really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It felt good to do it at the end, despite the time to be like,
Shut up, JJ.
shut up! JJ, this is family friendly.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
When we when Edwards just put us together and was like, just work it out, like do a
Yeah.
fight, and we just did. Like it felt fun.
I think also it got way more fun because we were previously doing it with like fencing swords, and we were like, oh, they're okay. And then one day they turned up with these double-edged swords, and they were like, right, try it with these. And we were like, oh, okay, let's do it. Okay.
It was a lot of fun until we went a little bit overboard one night, and I think my sword got thrown almost into the audience, and they weren't light. Yeah. And
like it slid down the side or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's because we had one of the ramps, and I meant to just let go of it, but I sort of threw it, and Edwards was not happy after that show.
Yeah,
that was like the daggers as well. They were like ridiculously large. The blades were like that long, and they're
more like pirate cutlasses, to be honest. Like,
yeah.
They were absolutely huge. Like, yeah. I remember smearing those in blood, and then they like sort of slid around. I had to sort of like grip on something.
Oh yeah, the fake blood as well. Because
that bucket had so much stuff in it by the end. Like
in the very last scene when I'm meant to have murdered you, and I come back on with blood on my sword, blood on my hands, and every night they progressively added more and more blood until on the final night I give JJ a crown that's just dripping.
It's just blood.
And I'm just kneeling in a pool.
Remember that one time that the crown got really stuck in the bag, and I was starting to get
I was kneeling in front of you, looking at you, just sort of like wiggle and trying to get this crown out of a bag.
Yeah, that was painful.
That was like the best scene though, in terms of visual wise, with JJ holding that crown up at the end.
That was a good shot.
Sold that section of the show.
That was like for the
very long pause before the lights went out. I was like,
what did you think of the design of the show and its style compared to like other versions of the show that you've seen? Or did you think it was a good production to be in terms of like style and stuff and costume design, or was it?
Pardon?
Well, I think like from the start, where we were sort of told from the beginning that it was going to be Game of Thronesy, and I was very much looking forward to Furs. And do you remember that? That was going to be a thing. And as much as I did like the style we ended up doing, it did feel like that we chose the modern military style because it's a lot simpler and easier to do.
Yeah.
Because
we furs and stuff, that would have been epic.
It would have been
wanted to have like a big Jon Snow coat that just like
yeah.
And
You've got a throne made out of mirrors, Ollie.
Yeah, I did, didn't I? That's cool. It's not quite the Iron Throne, but you know, it was a mirror throne. Fair play.
Mark's question actually said compared to other productions, so I was just thinking about very minimalist design of the two-man Macbeth that I saw with Mark, and I thought that that was an even more sort of modernist take on it. They just used kind of boxes that look like an IKEA set, and we sort of I don't know, but our set, I love the ramp and I love the cross shape. I don't know how I felt about the chairs on stage.
Oh, in the top of the stage, yeah.
How did everyone else feel about the chairs on stage?
I feel like we'd almost directed it more end on, and then like with the ramp, but then we never really given as much thought to the people who were sitting like right there.
Yeah,
and it felt weird that they were raised as well, because it's like, oh, hello, you're on stage too.
Also, they're obviously they're all lit as well.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So,
but otherwise, it would have been like, here we go. We have a cross on the stage, and then there's just this space where nobody can step.
You've got some like cape. Yeah.
It was, obviously, it was good for my scene.
And with the concert hall, it's like you're restricted to that space, you know? Like, obviously, if you were to do a cross shape, you could actually... I think for Coram Boy, they did a cross shape in the actual concert hall. That was cool. But
I think I would have preferred it... Oh, sorry. Go on.
Yeah, but obviously, we couldn't just dig into the console stage, you know, and put those seats downwards. So, yeah. Anyway, Ollie, what were you going to say?
I mean, I was just going to say, in terms of the style, the non-time period, we didn't have like a specific time period. It was non-specific. And I like the idea of like having almost these factions, I think, that he talked about. But towards like when we were getting into really performing the play, I think the guns became quite a bit of a hassle. And I think it would have been so much better if it was just daggers and swords, because those always worked so much better. And so having a gun that sometimes didn't fire, and I was sort of like, bang, it was kind of like, it was difficult to, I don't know, to
I was going to mention the guns and in things I wasn't a huge fan of, just because when you wanted them to fire, it wasn't great. But it was even worse when you were meant to shoot at me and it was meant to not work, because that was the point where, charmed life, untimely ripped, etc., etc. Unfortunately, because they hadn't been working the entire play, people thought that was another mishap.
Thought it was a fluke, yeah.
Yeah, there were like laughs at that moment.
Yeah,
Was it?
I think the guns would have worked otherwise.
Were they meant to? Was it like a cap gun or whatever? How were they doing the actual effect of it shooting?
But occasionally they just wouldn't fire.
It would have you would literally click and have a sort of a boom sound effect, but it wasn't like not a sound effect. I mean, you know what I mean? Yeah, it was a cap gun. And then sometimes just the canister didn't work, and I would be like, "Stamp, shoot your shot."
When you do the rage scene, when you do that rage scene of like you kill one of your servants when she tells you something that you don't like. I seem to remember, because I was standing at the back of the stage, you shooting her and never actually went off. And she just had to fall down, like stamping at the same time. And dramatically, that didn't really work.
Yeah. Oh my word. I would have preferred to just get like a knife and go, "Yeah, you're dead." Blah. Blood. More fake blood. We need more fake blood.
There needed to be a lot. I think blood packs could have really have done with some like explosive blood packs.
Oh yeah.
Some audience
so difficult to use.
I know. Imagine the audience walking out of the whole place. Or if we gave them all ponchos. Didn't Edward say something about that?
He said
ponchos.
We're going to get ponchos.
Blood.
Yeah. He said they were going to get sort of blood-proof ponchos that were then going to get covered if they were in the front row. That would have been so cool.
Because we had the curtains which were covered in blood as well, and they were going to get like more and more bloodied up as the plays went on, because they were like white, but then they gradually.
That was just actual paint, though.
Right. I wasn't sure if there was going to be more. Like the original plan was that they.
Well, you didn't think it was like
more
blood.
You didn't think it was real blood.
I got some of my blood on it. I cut my thumb during one of the shows on the tower in the corner where I poked my head up at the top. I cut my thumb on the brake, and then when I pulled the curtain apart, it was just some of my actual blood on the curtain.
You're like, waste not, want not. This may as well be a bit of set dressing, you know?
Yeah, you got to use, because that means I could get that cool handprint effect on the curtain, which otherwise is really difficult to use a paintbrush with. So
there you go.
Yeah.
I loved this show.
What?
I loved this show. I was so emotionally attached to this show, more so than a lot of shows I've done. I remember crying quite a lot when it finished the last night, because it was really a year of work on that show. Because I normally, just the last thing, before we move on, I normally direct things which are quite. I stick to the source material quite closely. So Sweeney was very close to the source material. All Man Two Governors was. Love and Info was a bit different. Maybe I've changed. But stuff, I sort of do paint by numbers a little bit. And this was one where it was very high concept and and it took a lot of strategic planning and work. And I loved the way it came off in the end.
Yeah, it was brilliant. I think it really worked. Okay, Mark, so we're doing the cast interview, like the...
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So if we begin with, what were some of your favourite memories from the show, or like during the rehearsal process?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, it's quite a long period of time, as you were just saying. So
when did you start rehearsing it? Was it September? When did you start rehearsing?
I started with Ollie and Ella, pretty much, I think after October half term. And I worked with those two and with Imogen until Christmas.
Right.
Basically with just them. A little bit with Tom, who was a Macduff, and a little bit with JJ, I think, on some of the Malcolm stuff. Because it's basically a series of duologues. Macbeth. It's a series of Macbeth and Lady Macbeth discussing things in various locations, and then the plot fits in around it. So I worked with those two. I absolutely loved the first time we played with the dagger scene. This was one of the first things we did, was we played with the dagger scene with the idea that Holly, the daughter, was there holding the dagger. When that idea came to me, that he could see her, is this a dagger? And he's talking to her like, is this a dagger? Like a child. That was a like eureka moment, because it's a play everyone knows, and they're impossible speeches to do. And if there's something new about them or unique, I absolutely love that. I loved the excitement and glee on Tom Budgeon's face when we gave him a sword. That was simultaneously terrifying, and it was really fun because he was like, yeah, I'm going to be really professional. And then I just looked around and he's like swinging it around his head like I'm Highlander. And I think he still thinks he is to a certain extent. That was really fun. I remember playing with your character, Mark, the idea of appearing in different places on stage.
Yeah,
it was a really fun, like,
that was
thing to do.
A couple of rehearsals where we were just going through backwards and forwards, like where I was actually coming up. I'm fairly sure you added different places into the stage just to add towards the comedic.
I did. I 100% did. That tower that you appeared from was only there for you to appear from. That was left over from Molly and the Stardust, that tower. We didn't use it for anything else. It was just you appearing.
That was one of my favourite moments because everything else is sort of very central in the actual show. And then suddenly when you hear me coming out of nowhere and my head pokes out, I remember just waiting behind that curtain because just scenically that section was so nice to do because it was just a bit to mess around with, and just because that whole scene was by myself, so I was sort of just
the porter is so difficult because it's not funny, but everyone thinks that it is because they know about it as the porter scene and the comic relief, and everyone studied it at GCSE, and everyone's been told that it's the hilarious comic relief, and it can be funny, but it's the pressure to be funny in that bit is really is quite heavy. So we just did a little visual gimmick to take away that pressure, I think, and also to play with the space a bit more because it's fun having all that unusual space. Also the first time I remember playing with the banquet scene, and we'd stolen a table from they opened the Drama Cafe that year, and they bought these new tables, and they were next door, and I had no idea how we were going to do the banquet scene. Like, we had no money for the set, we had nothing left, and we just wheeled in a table to play with because it was sturdy enough to stand on, and then that table ended up being the entire focus of that scene, with Lauren jumping on it, kicking plates everywhere. There's a thing in the final video somewhere where, was it one night Ollie just got really excited and just kicked the entire banquet all over the stage.
It's the final night where I think Ollie got to the point where he was like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it now. And he just the plates went everywhere, the food went everywhere, possibly into the audience as well.
I think,
back for the audience then. Was it real food as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was real food. It was real food that we didn't really replace as the week went on. So it was real food that had sat under stage lights every evening. It was bread, which was probably, you could hammer nails with it.
Yeah.
It was bread and cheese, basically, wasn't it?
Yeah, bread, cheese and grapes. I remember carrying grapes. Part of my role.
I did. I realised how if you really wind Ollie up, then he'll really go during that rehearsal. And there's a sort of psychopathic streak to Ollie, which I think I really enjoyed coming out in in that descent into madness. I liked playing with that idea, and I would just wind him up and just provoke him in rehearsals to try and make him lose his temper, because he's such a sort of smiley, affable guy. I just wanted to see him going mad.
Yeah, I find that's a really good rehearsal technique. When we did a workshop, just before Les Mis, I can't remember who came in.
Matt Burns.
Yeah, was it Matt Burns? It was Matt Burns. I thought it was. But yeah, and he basically got a wall of everyone in the workshop lined up in the drama studio, and I had to say like my monologue from Les Mis whilst like running and trying to get through this wall of people, and it was the most tiring thing. I was just trying to break through this wall of people, and it was actually so good because you don't know until you try it how good it is. Because when he was explaining it, I was thinking like, is this really going to work? But actually, that ended up being so helpful. I think getting pushed to your limits makes you able to act getting pushed to your limits, I feel.
Yeah, well, it saves having to act too much, doesn't it, actually? If you're actually feeling those emotions.
And you can recall it.
It's easier to feel those emotions than to pretend from nothing.
Definitely.
That was one we struggled a bit with being in the round at that point, because I really wanted him to throw stuff and kick stuff, and it became difficult because we had audience everywhere. I think we did hit some audience members with some stuff at one point.
I certainly covered some audience members with water. Unintentional.
No, I told you to do that. That was when you were like pissing on them, wasn't it?
No, but also I filled up one of my glasses too much with water. So when I was like that, I flicked the glass by accident and one person got covered. But luckily I came back with the mop and cleared everything up.
Luckily.
I once did a production of Animal Farm where when the revolution happened, the animals had water pistols with blood in them. And I'd given some of the audience, I'd put like umbrellas on the seats, but then just told the kids to go mad. It was a junior production. And one of the French assistants at the school had come to see it wearing white trousers, entire white trousers. And I just saw her just running away, just with completely red trousers. I was like, oh my God, that's my fault. Sorry, but it's really fun.
So you talked about like some specific scenes already, but did you have a particular favourite section that you found you enjoyed watching from the side the most? Because I think the ending, I think, when JJ's crowned as king, I think that's my favourite bit. Yeah. What about you?
I loved that final image, and JJ, for all he's frustrating sometimes, he does he has an inherent understanding of Shakespeare, where he makes sense of it, and that I think that was true in the English scene. The English scene is such a crazy bit of writing because it's about 25-30 minutes long, and that's just Malcolm, Macduff, and Ross just arguing. And it's structurally it's designed to give the guy playing Macbeth a break. They typically, big leading parts in Shakespeare shows have Act 4 off, and it's the same in there. It happens in a lot of them, but we cut it down quite considerably. But it's weirdly, you have to leave it in because it's the psychological churning of Malcolm from a no-hoper into a potential king. And so that journey is important. I loved Act 5 because we decided to do Act 5 with no breaks. Act 5 is 6 or 7 tiny scenes. Sorry, I should know that, but it's been a while. And it's literally just cross-cuts. If you think if it was a film, it just cross-cuts from the English camp to the Scottish camp, from the English camp to the castle. And we just did it with the angles of the stage. So one was on the horizontal plane and then the vertical plane. And when you look back on that, it just literally just changes from green to blue, I think, internal to external. And there's no breaks in it at all. We drilled that, overlapping the dialogue. And I think I even put the sound effects and the lighting cues on a timer so that there wasn't I went on to then do an entire play based on timing with Love and Information. So maybe this is where it began. I don't know if if you knew that love and information there was one cue. It was go at the beginning.
Right, yeah.
And everything was driven by the timing. That we tried to do that a little bit with this, and it was just, and the transition cues would be about half a second long, boom, or something.
Yeah.
And it would be, there was an explosion effect. There was an effect we used, a sound effect, which was called subtle boom.
Yeah. It's a bit of an oxymoron on that.
Yeah. And it literally just went boom in the background. It was a little thing. And I think it was in the show like 12 or 13 times. Every time a character would appear that we wanted to draw attention to, it would just go boom. And it's just a little nod to it. And another one, which was called Hues Ambient Dark, which was a mix I'd done of various little ambient sound effects. But Act 5, we went to town with all of the effects and overlapping things and machine gun fire and trumpets and drums and all sorts of things, but just for like a second as it would change. And I love it, looking back now, how smooth it is, that Act 5 transition.
It's quite, you talking about all those little elements of sound, I'd say it was quite a sound-driven show almost, because I remember at the start of rehearsal, you were saying how you made like a whole playlist for the show, and you'd drill that into us in rehearsals, and it would just be in the background for all the rehearsals that we were doing. And that definitely created the atmosphere that you wanted to present.
Yeah, I had 120 songs on a playlist leading up to the start of rehearsals, and then we cut that down significantly as we went through. But I had that soundscape stuff mapped out before we went, because I think it comes back to the time period thing. If we're not, the atmosphere is the most important thing, and it is probably in any production element. But for me, I really wanted that music and I wanted it to be quite filmic in terms of its manipulation of atmosphere. Because it's quite hard as well, Shakespeare, to really get that across with just language. And especially for younger audiences, not even with a younger actor. You guys get it, you're smart. But a younger audience, or a year 7, 8 audience, you want to excite them with Shakespeare so that they learn it more and they get into it, because I think it's really important. And especially there's a weird pressure on Macbeth in that everyone is currently studying it or has studied it for GCSE. So I wanted that atmosphere to drive everything. And me and Ollie spoke a lot about that in early rehearsals, about we got the basics of the character down, and then it was about riding that emotion. Another favorite moment of sound, actually, mixing with the language, was the end of what we made the end of the first half, which was the end of the banquet scene, when all this carnage has happened and the audience is still wiping food off themselves, and it's just Macbeth and Lady Macbeth at either end of the dining table, and the daughter we made sit in the middle or stand in the middle on the table, and they just suddenly start talking about how they haven't slept for a long time. And we had this music come in, which was going to end the first half, but it was just that timing of the word sleep. And then I can't remember what the track's called. It might even be a Polish thing. There's a lot of Polish music in that show. I wonder what it says, Warsaw on the wall behind me. Maria's influence. But I loved that moment, and I spent a long time with Ollie about the timing of that and how you let the music tell some of the story for you. Because really, they basically, since they've had the idea that they're going to kill Duncan, they don't sleep. We see them every night planning or doing this or doing that or going mad and then being crowned and then traveling, and then they start worrying, and they just haven't slept for like a month, and you wonder why they're going mad.
Yeah, I think that the sound design in that show was probably one of my favorites that I've seen at RGS, because obviously I wasn't involved. So watching from the audience, the choral music that you used and the orchestral stuff, I think particularly at the start, the very beginning and very end, those those two tracks, they just like gave me the shivers watching it. Like, I don't know why, but nothing else, classical music or choral music just gives me the shivers like nothing else. Like, that you can have there's dramatic music as you want, but that genre will just like light up a show, I feel. And also with those little sound effects like the booms and stuff, they're so great to like draw attention if someone's behind, because of course you're like, as you said, there's no this isn't end on, it isn't traverse. So when like someone's coming in behind you, if you have a speaker just directly behind someone, just do a little boom, then that just instantly draws the attention behind them. I think it's just so important.
We did a lot of directional sound, and we also, as part of the reason we built the ramp out as far as we did, is we built in some subwoofers underneath it so we could shake the stage. So when in the night of the murder, the stage was basically vibrating through the whole thing, and then through Act 5 as well, it was vibrating, which I stole from Hamilton. Hamilton did that a bit when they rebuilt the Victoria Palace before Hamilton came in and put speakers under the seats for things like guns and ships and all the heavy bass in that. And we did the same thing in Les Mis, actually building in the woofers, and just directional sound is so cool. And it's something that's developing so fast in theatre. You look at something like The Encounter, it's quite a long time ago now, but how they use directional binaural sound. I loved the idea. There was a great moment as well because I love juxtaposing happy music with sad events or vice versa. So when Lady Macduff was being killed, it was a song called Bring on the Hellman, which is like a jazz, and it was like going through the scene, but we used that as a transition, and we brought it from what you'd call non-diegetic sound to diegetic sound, as in it was playing through all the speakers, and then it came down into just the record player at the start of that scene, which is really just a fun little gimmick trick. Anything that makes me go, oh, that's fun. I like doing as well, just because you can. And actually we've used it since then as an example of non-diegetic versus diegetic sound. So it's been useful from that perspective as well.
In the second game, which goes towards your total barn door score, we, as the character of the ever-present Porter, will read diary entries that he had made during the actions of the play, in which we will describe a specific character or scene, and then it's your role to guess what scene or character we are describing. So we'll read a diary entry from the Porter, and and then we'll ask you a question about that diary entry, and you have to say a just simple, answer as to what's happening. So, you ready?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Each of you will have three goes.
Yeah.
Right, so I'll start off first with Ollie's first one. I'll do it in accent because why not? I dare say 'twas evening. The revelry was over, and I had recently found my way upon a few of my faithful colleagues. We caroused and supped upon the wine till shadows were cast upon the wall. It was then I drifted to a quiet sleep beneath the table, flitting in and out of dreams, to be awoken by my friend, all bleeding from the neck. Who is the friend?
Macbeth, because he kills Duncan. Bleeding from the neck. Friend.
Oh, that's pretty crucial.
He's
Is it
one
the
of
English
my
scene?
colleagues. He's one of the Porter's colleagues, and he's bleeding from
is it the
neck.
Doctor?
No. The answer is one of the guards at Duncan's door who was stabbed by you in your
fair
raid.
enough. Fair
His
dues.
throats were slit.
Oh, yeah. Oh, was he stabbed by, what's her name? Lady Macbeth.
What's her name?
What's her name? Well, to be fair, you don't find out her first name, so it's like Lady. You just find out his name having married her. But yeah.
All right,
yeah.
Tom.
All right.
You ready? Okay, I'll attempt some sort of northern accent. Not sure where it's from, but whatever. I was wandering on the heath. 'Twas foggy, so I oft saw not as well as one might on any other night. What is that? Okay. Not as I didn't see as much as I would see on any other night, basically. However, I saw some large dark monster in discussion twixt three stooped figures. I would have walked over, yet the ground was muddy, and I was scared of their incantations. I could have sworn, though, that, as a learned man would know, the monster was sprung from the Greek mythology. Who is the monster?
Hecate or Hecate, god of witchcraft and witches.
Correct.
Boom.
Straight in there.
Mm.
Lovely.
I was a Percy Jackson kid, pal. Try me.
What's Hecate's rock? What happens? I don't know what happens.
Is she in the witches scene, like the one
I
where
think
I
we
go
cut
back
her
to the
from the
witches?
scene in Alva.
Yeah, she shows up like once in the play, I'm pretty sure, and just continue to be evil to the witches, and they're
it's
like,
an apparition,
yeah,
isn't it?
bet, be evil.
I think it was some point after the witches' dubstep dance that it probably
Oh
occurred.
yes, the classic
Really
Shakespearean
important
dubstep
that
dance. That was good. That was
You've got the soliloquies,
Okay,
you've got the
moon.
monologues, and then you've got the dubstep dance. Okay,
I love that scene.
I don't think I ever actually saw that scene.
Is this the one where I'm chugging potions down and I'm like they're all just
Yeah.
different colours? Yeah.
And
Where they're like
Tasted- those
double,
tasted so
trouble and
crazy.
trouble. That's how I assumed it went.
I think it was.
They got on Snaps and started just rapping it. That's what it sounded like.
I was beneath
Fair
the
enough.
stage at that point actually, because I was like, and then I burst out, but you can hear the music and everyone's stamping around in like a circle or something like that.
Right, okay. JJ, your first one. My liege had sent me on some expedition. I cannot remember of what kind, yet I was surprised when I found a blade at my side. I just stopped to tie my laces, unbreeched, when I heard some ungodly cry. 'Twas truly terrible. I ran towards it when another screamed, "Egg!" which made me run faster, for supper had long passed. What is happening?
Did the ungodly cry come from Louise's mouth? Is that what's happening here?
I
Yeah,
think so.
Egg, and then
that is the scene. Lady Macduff is being killed with her children. What a happy.
I was in the wings for that scene, waiting to go on. I think with what's the character's name? Donald Bain? Could be Donald Bain. And then every time I had to put my fingers in my ears for Louise's piercing scream. Wasn't there? Didn't someone
Wait, what are you
end up stabbing a
thought
bot?
That was no. Then it was you. You and me had to go on, and you had to bring the table on.
Oh, the classic, yes.
Yeah.
But the English scene.
That was
Yeah.
the English scene, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was.
All Macduff's pretty chickens were slain.
Oh, that was a bummer for him.
Oh, that was
all
a
the
real
chickens.
F.
Oh, that was my actual favourite scene.
It's a big F in the chat.
My favourite scene was definitely when I was like, convert grief to anger or whatever, and then like I was like, do it as a man, and then Tom was like, but I must also feel it as a man, and then
That is the best line in the show.
the best line.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was sick. That was cool. Best bit.
Nice.
And then I went from bad guy to good guy, and it really got everyone.
Yeah. Really pranked me. You were a really good pervert.
Okay, Ollie, your second one.
Yes.
I tell you, 'twas thunder, lightning, everything was overturned. So I decided to have a nap outside, sleep off the drink.
Shaughnessy get here.
Shut up. Okay, right. I have to start again.
Sorry.
I tell you, there 'twas thunder, lightning, everything was overturned. So I decided to have a nap outside, sleep off the drink, and up in the sky, while I was watching the stars, was a smaller bird swooping on a slightly larger one. What am I describing?
Oh my god. Wait, when does the porter go outside and have a watch? Oh my god.
When there's
Bird.
thunder, lightning, and everything.
Oh, thunder, lightning, or and rain.
No.
Oh, is that not?
There's a smaller bird swooping on a slightly larger one.
Right. So
If you don't
There's
know
a-
it, to be fair, Ollie, I don't think you're going to
It's a
get
bit
it.
English. It is a bit Englishy.
Oh right, okay.
Mm.
Can you give me an idea as to
There's some
what
sort
what
of-
area of the play this is? Like, what is it? Beginning of the play?
It's at the scene where I'm sitting next to the fire. I say the line.
Oh,
I am dark currently.
oh, wait. Hang on. What say again, Tom?
I'm being Dark Knight and also a travelling lamp currently.
Is this the English scene? No. I
No,
Right.
no, that's not the English scene. I thought you meant English, like studying the play.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Okay.
It's the mousing owl killing the eagle.
Yeah.
It's the upturning of the natural order.
Oh, I don't know. I'm going to be honest. I'm very confused.
It's the upheaval of the chain of being.
Yes.
Okay,
Right. Well.
Right.
is it in
I'm
Act
lucky.
2?
Tom, this is your second diary entry, right?
Go on.
My master was talking to himself. Not unusual at the time, I must tell ye. I was a little tipsy, but I noticed something hanging from the ceiling. Scared that it might injure my master, 'cause I'm a lovely chap. I went over and took it down. Surprise, surprise, 'twas a knife. I pocketed it. What's happening?
What?
So this isn't actually something that Porter does, is it? It's just this is your
Yeah,
own little
this is my interpretation of the play.
It's the extended edition of Macbeth.
It does actually happen in the play, though.
So you're telling me there's a knife hanging, or is
There
the
was a
knife
knife. Yeah, yeah.
Hmm?
Or is the knife appearing?
Oh, is this Macbeth has imagined is this a dagger which I see before me? Macbeth was like,
Yeah.
oh, the dagger, I
Ooh.
can't reach it. The porter's
Yeah.
like, it's too high. I'll get it for him.
Yeah.
Someone could.
I just take it down because it could injure him. So I'm like,
Very
well,
thoughtful of you. Thank you very much.
That's my it's my duty to save my master. So I take it down.
I don't think that happened in the play.
Not in our version, but certainly in one of them, JJ.
Not in Shakespeare's version.
The death of the author. It can be what you want.
What?
Right.
Okay, JJ.
you're second one.
Okay.
I was tasked with carrying plates, like the pauper I was, when a loud noise, 'twas very loud, spooked me, and I dropped the plate. 'Twas all quiet, and everyone wasn't looking at me, but our newly appointed king, who was staring into the distance. I waved my hand over his eyeline, but he didn't move, so I brushed the plate away. What's happening?
What? Is this when someone dropped the plates and it span around?
The porter dropped some plates he was carrying, but what's Macbeth up to?
He was staring into the distance. He was trying to wave at him. He couldn't see him.
Can I get half a point if I got it?
Please.
Or is that the other one? Is it the banquet when he sees Banquo?
Yes,
Right on.
Okay.
100%.
correct.
Beautiful.
I forgot about Banquo.
What? Right. Ollie, this is your final one.
Right.
Oh, I say I tucked him up all nice in bed. Such a peaceful sleep as he was. Didn't stir once. Of course, I was nearby at the time, so I kept check on him a couple of times. Must have been near midnight. 'Twas shocking, though, for him. No, I can't say. That's it. Who is it?
Duncan. Because he's
that's
sleeping. Okay.
That's it. Duncan's in bed.
Lovely.
Boom.
So we tucked up Duncan into bed and then he
tucked
gets
up Duncan
murdered.
in bed. We kept a check
Lovely.
on him.
Did you read him a story as well? And then,
Yeah. I read him the Three Billy Goats gruff. I should have
Oh.
included that.
Okay, Tom, your final one.
All right.
I heard a knocking indeed. Was it the hammering of my head? I don't know. I'd been outdoors for a while and had drunk many a man's fill. It was my duty to open the door that night, being the porter, who walked in but two fellows. One of them all lordy-like, but the other with a soldier, perhaps. Who is the soldier?
Oh, Joyce. It's Joyce. I don't know the character's name though. Oh,
What happened? Did ever-
it's like
I know.
we're like hammering. We hammered off stage to come in. Oh, it's like Ross. I don't know.
Time.
It's one of those ones.
Begins with L.
Sounds like lemon.
Lawrence.
Oh, Lennox.
Oh,
We'll give you half a point for knowing
Everybody-
which scene it was.
oh.
Will we?
Yes, we'll do that.
I'm not
I
gonna
knew
lie,
the-
they've scored up so many half points in this round. It's a
Yeah,
joke.
Well, half points are the way to go.
Yeah.
As long as you've got many
We've
of them.
been too grateful. Right,
Grateful.
JJ,
That's the right
the
word.
final
Is it?
one and the final part of the game. Are you
Wait,
ready?
did you say my name?
Yes.
Oh, okay, let's go. Hit me.
'Twas quite strange. The lady was seething at the mouth, frothing and crying as if in a great deal of pain. And when I turned round, she was frozen, quite still and cold to the touch. What has happened?
Well, I don't want to seem like a goofy goober for saying that Lady Macbeth's killed herself, but it sounds awfully like Lady Macbeth's killed herself.
That's 100% correct. That's
Full point right there.
Light on me as well.
Yeah.
Mate, is that another 3 out of 3, JJ?
I don't know. Ollie got my last one.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. 2 out
For
of
the
3.
team. For the play.
Yeah, exactly.
What was that? A lady with a beard? Well, that's what I heard anyway. They'll say differently. Who did the porter hear?
A lady with a beard. Who did the porter hear?
Would you like me to repeat the section again?
Can I hear it in a sentence? No, go on. Go on, yeah, repeat it for me. Who did the porter hear?
What was that? A lady with a beard? Well, that's what I heard anyway. They'll say differently.
I don't know. Lady Macbeth?
It's Banquo in the starting scene when Banquo says, "What are the witches, lady with beards?"
Yeah.
famous line.
Banquo does say that. Yeah, I would say that you are ladies, but yet your beards forbid me to say that you are so. A line would cut from the play, in fact.
That's probably why I didn't remember it then, isn't it?
But that makes sense.
Okay, so the next one. I'll save now. My Scottish accent is probably really bad, so just, you can laugh at me if you want. Anyway, I was out collecting game for the big banquet when I noticed a few men standing in a copse of trees. They were talking pretty loudly, so I couldn't help snooping a bit. 2 big brutes of men. Anyways, they soon scattered and started walking through the woods, very suspicious-like. Who are these men that the porter is describing?
The murderers.
Correct.
Yeah.
Instant.
Right on.
I've got the game now.
Yeah.
Obviously, we didn't actually have the murderers weren't men in our one. It was Ross, wasn't it? Instead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was Ross and probably Ethan Walsgrove in a balaclava, I think.
Yeah. one of the best scenes where the child says, "What, you egg?"
What? Yeah.
One of the best lines in the play. Right.
Yeah, the child on crutches in our version. Because Millie, oh bless. Yeah, sorry. Next one.
This is your third and final one, so fingers crossed you get it correct. I'd been given a shield and sword. I must say the attire was quite agreeable, if not heavy, and I was stomping along when all of a sudden some great cry could be heard nearby, and a flame alighted. 'Twas a fright, I admit. It appeared like some hellish depiction, and then people started cheering, and being bashful, I cheered with them. What is happening?
A flame appeared, and then people started cheering.
Yeah. Some hellish description.
This description. Oh God. I don't know. It's the sword and the shield. It's not the beginning when Macbeth is fighting the war. No, it's not that.
It's a section of a war, but not the one at the beginning.
Section of a war. Oh, I don't know. Is it the end when Macbeth's killing everyone?
Yeah, it's the final bit where Macduff has just killed Macbeth.
Oh, and there's a light go. There's
the hellish depiction, which was in fact the line, "Turn, hellhound, turn." And then people start cheering because Macbeth has died.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. How did I not get that?
Who knows?
Yeah. Gruff, yeah. I need to go back and read the play again, I think.
Before we close the barn doors on this week's show, we'll return to the barn door score leaderboard to see where Macbeth places against the other RGS show reel.
Thank you for watching. We hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have. And also thank you to Tom, JJ and Ollie, and also Mr. Edwards who came on the podcast this week. We really enjoyed it. So thank you guys. We'll return at some point in the near future with Annie. So look forward to that, guys. See you later.
Goodbye.